Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to His Excellency François Hollande, President of the French Republic, Mr. Tharman Shanmugaratnam, Deputy Prime Minister and Coordinating Minister for Economic and Social Policies, and Professor Wang Gangwu, Chairman of the IC's Board of Trustees. President François Hollande, Deputy Prime Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to the 40th Singapore Lecture. The IC's Yusof Ishak Institute is privileged to host this lecture entitled France and Singapore, Strategic Partners in a Fast-Changing World, which will be delivered by His Excellency François Hollande, President of the French Republic. To begin the proceedings, I have the pleasure of inviting Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Tharman Shanmugaratnam, to deliver his opening remarks. DPM, sir.
His Excellency, President François Hollande, President of the French Republic, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all. We are extremely honored to have French President François Hollande to deliver the 40th Singapore Lecture today. President Hollande's visit is the first state visit here by a French president and marks a significant milestone in our bilateral relations. President Hollande is also the third French leader to deliver the Singapore Lecture. Former French President Giscard d'Estaing delivered the third Singapore Lecture in 1982, and former Prime Minister Raymond Barre delivered the seventh Singapore Lecture in 1986. We are privileged that with President Hollande's lecture today, we are able to carry on a tradition which reflects the importance that both countries place on our bilateral relations. President Hollande has had an outstanding career. Like many of his predecessors, he was a graduate of the prestigious École nationale d'administration. He joined the Socialist Party in 1972 and began his political career as a special advisor for economic matters to President François Mitterrand in 1981. President Hollande was first elected as the municipal councillor for Ussel before going on to win a National Assembly seat in 1988. He was appointed president of the Socialist Party in 2008 and subsequently elected president of the French Republic in May of 2012. Singapore-France relations have strengthened under President Hollande's government. Today, France is Singapore's second largest trade partner in the European Union. French enterprises continue to see Singapore as a natural and competitive gateway to Asian markets, with more than 1,800 French firms already established here. The last 5 years have also been marked by an exceptionally high number of high-level visits between our two countries, including the exchange of visits by our prime ministers in 2012 and 2013, as well as President Tony Tan's state visit to France in 2015. A highlight of our bilateral relationship under President Hollande's leadership was the establishment of a strategic partnership in October 2012. The partnership is a reflection of our common outlook on the challenges and opportunities we face, and deepened cooperation in areas such as defense, trade and investment, education and culture, renewable energies, and nuclear safety. To mark the 5th anniversary of our strategic partnership, our two countries have released a joint declaration of innovation, which will pave the way for greater collaborations in industries of the future, including space technology, smart cities planning, fintech, and health and biomedical industries. Singapore and France share a common vision of the world that embraces openness, multilateralism, globalization, and the rule of law. This is especially important when there's a rising mood to turn inwards in some parts of the world. We all share common challenges, but the solutions are not to be found from turning inwards. France has offered steadfast support for the EU-Singapore FTA, which will bring tangible benefits for both sides and help catalyze the deepening of linkages not only between our two countries, but between two important regions of the world, Europe and Asia. We also look forward to the ASEAN-EU Comprehensive Air Transport Agreement, which will improve our connectivity and people-to-people ties. How can Singapore and France continue to strengthen our strategic partnership? What can we do in the face of disruptive technologies, increasing populism, and changing geopolitics? These are some of the questions that President Hollande will address in his speech, titled France and Singapore, Strategic Partners in a Fast-Changing World. Without further ado, let me invite President Hollande to deliver the 40th Singapore Lecture.
Mr. Vice Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, parliamentarians, it is a great honor for me that I feel very deeply that you have invited me to this conference for this 40th Singapore lecture. And I would like also on this occasion to confirm the strategic partnership that unite our two countries, because Singapore is a real country with whom we would have excellent relationships. And Singapore is a country which, thanks to its stability, its opening, its ability to take initiative, is a real ally. And Singapore is also a country which has the ability to anticipate what's coming in the future, and also it has the ability to take great initiatives. And like this quality with that of Lee Kuan Yew, who made your country a leading country in the region, and who has made a country whose inhabitants have the biggest income per inhabitant in the region. So why did I come here? But because I wanted to understand this country and that I admire. It's a country which is open to the world, which is aware that the first quality which has to be present is innovation. You have an exceptional geographical location. You're at the Strait of Malacca, at the crossroad of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. But the geographical locations doesn't tell all. You have been able to use and leverage that geographical location to produce very good results. And I've visited your harbour, the second in the world, and I'm really proud that a French company, CGM, has just achieved its greatest investment in Asia. You also have chosen technology in your policies, so to make sure that you use technology for your financial activities, when you build sustainable cities, when you build transport networks, and in order also to link citizens the one to the next. And also Singapore is the example of the smart city where all innovative solutions have been developed, and this is the third explanation for your secret. This is the reason why you're actually attracting all the talents of the world, researchers, companies, but also you have lots of French people who came to settle here. 15,000 people, according to our official statistics, and much more if we look at the Singaporean economy. This shows that you are a country which attracts talents and young talents. This is what I've understood of your model, the opening, the trust in the future, and the ability actually to anticipate. These principles are ours as well. France wants to be an open country, innovative country, capable of taking initiatives, capable of giving its youth a place and being able to really support innovation. So Singapore and France defends those principles, defend this model, because it is actually today threatened by a inward-looking policy, by protectionism, by isolationism, and by nationalism. And this temptation to look inward is not only dangerous, but it leads to a dead end, which means that we must be very vigilant in the face of all these old solutions, which unfortunately had already shown they were negative. The only solution for a fairer world, a fairer country, is to abide by and believe in simple principles. First of all, multilateralism, that is international cooperation, regional cooperation, and compliance with international law. Another principle is that of independence, respect, and also belief in the fact that if you are open, you are going to move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, our directions must be all the more clear as threats come after uncertainties. Uncertainties may be the results of elections, but uncertainties are also due to lack of decisions taken by the leaders of the world. But the uncertainties can come from situations we cannot find solutions. We live in a world of uncertainties, but also with difficulties in terms of economics, in terms of climate. We are facing necessarily a world that we cannot really know about, and they will not, and that world will not be the same as it was in the past. But now there are also terrorism. And these are threats. France was hit hard, and it is fully committed in fighting that scourge, which can strike everywhere. The influence of Daesh that we forced to retreat in Iraq, in Syria, thanks to the work of the international coalition, is a threat for all. More than 1,000 of nationals from Southeast Asia's countries are fighting on the Syrio-Iraqi front line. And there are also, and they can see, hundreds of European nationals which can go back to their country at any time and perpetrate attacks. And they can use the Daesh propaganda to strike their own country. So fighting terrorism requires more cooperation between governments, between police services, between the judiciaries, between the intelligence services of all the countries. And we've got also to continue fighting against radicalization and against any trafficking, which is a source of money for terrorists. We must use the weapons of technology against those who want to use technology to come and destabilize our societies or destroy our information system. I'm thinking of cyber security, cyber defense, which must be a priority for the countries who want to protect themselves against these terrorist actions. Our victory will depend on our resolve and our ability to work together in terms of prevention, protection, and reaction. And I know that France and Singapore share this approach. We must also be faithful to our values. We've got to respect our rule of law and reject any hatred speech or discrimination speech. When France was struck, I made sure, in my capacity as President of the Republic, I made sure that national cohesion was preserved, because it's exactly what terrorists want to attack. And they want to create in our country, in our society, a division which could be deadly for the country. So we've got to really make sure every time that we do away with false generalization. In French, we've got one word to express this ability to be free and respectful. And we call it, that's what we call secularism. And it's what we've been defending. That is, everybody has the freedom of having its own religion or have none, but at the same time, everybody has to abide by common rules, and the state must protect all the places of worship. But we are in the middle of a war against terrorism, which is going to go on for a long time, which means that our societies must be prepared. Our politicians must be aware that it is not a matter of adding another law, adding other equipment to really do away with terrorism. What is necessary is action at the scale of the world and using everything to be able to make us victorious, except from those who would make us not comply with the rule of law. But you see, terrorism is also in connection with war. But we can see that populists and terrorists can use fears, legitimate fears that people might feel. But these people might be tempted to impose on solutions which actually are contrary to the interest of our country. This is the temptation of looking inward. And it could hit big countries, big democracies. It could exist in entire continents. And we must explain the consequences of such choice. We must explain what the closing down of borders are all about, what the building of a wall means, what unfair and inappropriate migratory policies mean, because it would target the nationals of only one country, for instance. We've got to show that there are other solutions, and it's what I called regulated globalization, which must be based on the sovereignty of nations, but also on the place of international organizations, and in particular of the United Nations. And for all those who want to attack the United Nations, I would like to say that they are diminishing the ability of world governance to find solutions for conflicts. They cannot be a strengthening of the nations to the detriment of the system of international regulation. We can be certain of who we are without having to question all what has been done after the Second World War, and which has enabled to avoid further conflict and has also helped to settle conflicts. In the same way, commercially, it is very easy to tell public opinion that with duties and with taxes it will be easy to protect people's jobs. Well, we know that these proposals and this policy would just do the contrary, because over the last 60 years, world growth was supported and carried by the refusal to protectionism. If there is no possibility of exchanging services or goods, if we cannot foster the movement of knowledge and technology, then there is a risk of, the whole countries to feel diminished, and at the end of it all, there could be fewer jobs. These are not theoretical debates. This is not rhetoric. These are realities that we have actually witnessed in the past. One mustn't believe that new ideas are completely new. There is always an origin. It always comes somehow from somewhere in the past. And this debate already existed in the mid-19th century, and which was repeated in the middle of the 20th century before the Second World War, and which it's a debate which comes back today in the middle of the 20th century. So in the face of protectionism, we've got to show that compliance with an international order, regulated international order, is the best solution. And countries must sign trade agreements, and it's what we did between Europe and Singapore and between Europe and ASEAN. I would like to show how we've got to discard a sort of trial for strength attitude. What is important is international law. What it means is that we've got rules, and these rules are complied with. And amongst these rules, you have the law of the sea, free movement. And this is the reason why France, which has a presence in the Pacific Ocean, exercise its right of navigation in the south, in the region. I would like to add a comment on another threat which concerns you in Asia, but also is a concern for us all, i.e. the proliferation of weapon of mass destruction. A few months ago, we have signed an agreement with Iran on nuclear weapons, and we have managed to have a balance, which means that Iran will not produce nuclear weapons. But we know that in North Korea there is more than a temptation, but a will to benefit from and have a nuclear weapon. And here again, we've got to act, to impose sanctions, to take measures so that there is no situation which could put in jeopardy the stability and life of the people in the region. And France participated in a Deep Saber exercise in 2016 organized by Singapore, and we think that this is a very good answer and it's a good way of working together. I would like to conclude on a last threat, the threat of climate change. On that subject too, Singapore and France share the same view and have the same commitment. You can imagine what is at stake. You have witnessed an increase of rainfall, forest fires, and the rising in the level of the sea. Many Asian countries are exposed. I'm thinking of Bangladesh, who could lose a third of its territory, or in Vietnam, where the two big deltas, the Mekong and the Red River, are concerned by the rising of the level of the sea and by salinization. These are no longer assumptions. These examples are certainties. And if we do not act, we are doomed. So we've got to comply with the commitments which have been made. And I actually command the commitments made by Singapore, especially with the development for drinking water and the development of state-of-the-art skills in terms of building. And I wanted to really command your Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Balakrishnan, who really helped the Paris Agreement to be a success during the Paris conference. And we can even go further. What you've done in Singapore with the project of taxing carbon within 2019 is excellent, because it's important that the people who use carbon do realize what it means in terms of price. And we've got also to find innovative solutions for the energy transition. It's what we did with India, with the Alliance Solaire Internationale, and where also with all the activities to try and develop low carbon economies everywhere. So this is what we're facing, uncertainties and threats, but we are not powerlessness. We are not indifferent. We can act and take actions, and it's up to states to do so. And France considers that it's got a specific nation, not because its history would make it more apt than others, but because we carry principles that we share with Singapore. These principles are true for us, but they are true for the world over. They are universal values, and we are not defending vested interest, but we are defending the interest of the planet. And every time what we want is to protect and promote security, development, and we think that globalization must be governed, and we are not frightened to say that there must be a world governance, because today our horizon and our environment is the world. And Jacques Chirac and Lee Kuan Yew created ASEAN, and they have, at that time, the same understanding of the need of a dialogue and exchange between the heads of state of the two continents, and that dialogue must continue because Europe is the first economic power in the world, is the first trade power in the world, because Asia is the continent of the future for the world. So Singapore is one of the founding members of the ASEAN, which is going to celebrate its 50th anniversary. And I've just come from Rome, and I just celebrated the 60th anniversary of the signature of the Treaty of Rome. Well, we've got to encourage the development of exchanges between ASEAN and the European Union. There must be more exchange of technology. There must be more exchanges on all accounts. And the ASEAN negotiate several agreement with Singapore, and this process is a very lengthy process. It's far too long, but it's better to progress this way, transparently, rather than negotiating for too long. So the objective is to make sure that between the European Union and the ASEAN, we create a strategic partnership. And I know that ASEAN wants also to strengthen its integration, and I know that this decision will help foster the exchanges with the European Union. And be assured, Mr. Prime Minister, that France will certainly encourage the relationship between the European Union and ASEAN and Singapore, especially on transport. This is what I wanted to tell you. I wanted to deliver a message of lucidity because the world is today threatened, but also a message of truth because we've got to act and we can act, and a message of will because it is possible through who we are, Europe, Asia, i.e. a big part of the world, we can start policies which can lead to security development and prosperity. I would like to recall that France has decided to be really fully present in Asia. There are French companies who came here, and we've been able to double our exchanges with Singapore. We've been able to build big partnership very often around aeronautics. But now we can do it around energy, sustainable development, sustainable city. And we must, and we want to give French technology its opportunity in Asia. Even if in over 10 years the investment of stock in by French company has been multiplied by 3 to reach 100 billion euros. And France can also welcome the investment coming from Asia. And there again, over the last 10 years, the amount was multiplied by 3. But in order to continue this relationship, we need trust. And trust must be granted with care, because it's very important in terms of defense, technology, know-how. It is important to know who you're dealing with. But France trusts Singapore because you have given the right environment for companies, researchers, professors could work and develop. And also, I want to believe that you trust France too, because France has this ability to be inventive, to also provide freedom, because we are aware that the values that we carry are universal values, and we are aware that France has a role to play in Asia, and this is why I wanted to be here in Singapore and go tomorrow to Malaysia and the next day to Indonesia. And I knew that France will be well received. Thank you.
I'd like to thank President Hollande for his wide-ranging lecture, and in particular his clear and forthright statement of support for a rules-based multilateral order, and secondly for the importance of national cohesion in diverse societies that is also based on rules and common norms. These are issues that we all face, and I think your address expressed most lucidly and persuasively what many of us believe in. I would now like to open the floor to questions from anyone. Please introduce yourself before you give your question. Yes, please.
Mr. President, my name is Moller. I used to be State Secretary for the European Affairs in the Royal Danish Foreign Ministry, and is now working at the Institute for Southeast Asian Studies here in Singapore. Let me also thank you very much for the wide-ranging lecture. My question is about economic globalization. President Trump in the US and Brexit cast doubt over these two countries' commitment to institutionalized economic globalization as we know it. For the first time in 70 years, there is a genuine risk of nationalism and protectionism. There is a genuine risk of bilateralism being reintroduced instead of multilateralism that has been the cornerstone of economic globalization. My question is, Mr. President, can you see France and the European Union, as you said, the largest economic power in the world, step forward to defend and preserve economic globalization as we know it, and prevent a rollback to protectionism in its ugly form as we have seen it in earlier times of history, in particular in the 1930s? And can you see France and the European Union do so in cooperation with Asian nations and in cooperation with the Southeast Asian nations? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for your question, which is based upon your personal experience. It is in dire times that one can judge institutions and individuals. Europe is facing challenges which we probably did not anticipate just a couple of years ago. The first challenge is that of the Brexit. That is one country leaving the European Union, and not just any member, given the fact that it is one of the most populous countries, most prosperous countries as well, in the EU. The second challenge is the election of a president in the United States, putting together some theories of protectionism, or if not, at least of reduced confidence or trust in trade and exchanges. In addition, he does not see the European Union as a privileged partner. I did not say more, given that I do not want to create any diplomatic incident which would have some consequences on Singapore. For France, I can deal with it. So this is where we are. So again, in this situation, Europe is to shoulder its responsibilities. Is Europe able to continue without the United Kingdom? And the answer is yes. Assuming the negotiations is based upon respect for the decision taken by the British people, while making the right decisions so that Europe can move forward. So we are about to embark on a 2-year negotiation, but that will force Europe to integrate further and to open up cooperation with countries willing to move faster or further. This is what we call differentiated cooperation in Europe. And you look at the declaration of our meeting in Rome when we celebrated the 60th anniversary of the Rome Treaty. This is part of the text. But it means also that, well, you remember that initially Europe was based on a market, then on a currency, and then on some common policies. But Europe, to a large extent, was not very much based on its defense, because we considered that this was in the hands of NATO, in addition to the individual efforts of each country. But now, given outside threats and the fight against terrorism as well, Europe not only has to secure its borders, but also to deal with its defense. So I believe that this is a first challenge which will enable Europe to go further than its initial project. Then, regarding trade, the US can make a number of decisions and make some choices which will have an impact on their own economy and on the rest of the world as well. But we, Europe, we are a continent which should not be subject to any dependence. As you recalled earlier, we are the first economic power in the world, and we're meant to have some trade relations with all the other regions of the world. I know it will be difficult on the occasions of the G20 meetings. Look at the recent meeting of the Minister of Finance. It was difficult to include a reference to the negative impact of protectionism in the communiqué. But I've been attending so many summits. I can tell you that the communiqués and their wording do not matter so much. What truly matters is what we do in the end. And I believe that we will continue trade negotiations and trade as much as we can. And we can see who are the ones who want to step aside, those who want to walk away from the main economic flows will pay the price for it. But we shall keep the ability to support and to continue with these agreements. It is true that part of our public opinion is quite reluctant when it comes to opening up, and I do understand some of their reasons. They fear that trade or globalization can have a negative impact on their jobs, including in the industry. So we need to reassure people, make sure that trade can be fair, that industrialization can go on. These are answers we should bring about. But there are other people who would never accept the opening, including the opening of Europe, and some even want to challenge what we've been able to build after the Second World War. And their approach is not just in relation to goods, it's also in relation to individuals or ideas. It's their own conception of democracy. This is a battle we shall fight for, and we shall win. And then I trust Asia. I have faith in Asia. I'm sure Asia will be able to organize itself. It means that there will be further integration of your economies, and then we will continue and enjoy more and more balanced exchanges for the benefit of both our continents. Let me take an example. Each time a company invests here in Singapore, this is beneficial to the Singapore economy. This is beneficial to the French economy because that generates jobs in France and brings about innovation to be shared between Singapore and France. It also is stimulating. We have many researchers here, very much stimulated by what they're doing here. So it is indeed a battle to a large extent a political battle, but we have many arguments to win. And I did say, in a democracy at some point in time, the voters have the word. So never take anything for granted, and always trust and have faith in the citizens. Sometimes, indeed, they can be troubled or worried, but I have trust in the voters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. President, for your very enlightening lecture. I am Lê Hồng Hiệp. I'm a research fellow at the ISIS Yusof Ishak Institute. Mr. President, I would be most thankful if you could share with us your views on the two following questions. First, in your lecture, you mentioned new yet very urgent security issues such as terrorism and cybercrime. Do you see the prospect of a stronger cooperation between France and Singapore to deal with these issues in the future? And second, in your lecture, you also mentioned maritime security issue and France's naval presence in the region. And at the Shangri-La dialogue here in Singapore last year, your defense minister, Mr. Jean-Yves Le Drian, also addressed this issue, and he even called for coordinated patrols by European navies in Asian waters, including the South China Sea, to reinforce a rules-based maritime order. So, Mr. President, do you support such an idea? And what is your vision for the role that France and the EU can play in the maritime security of this region? Thank you.
The Defense Minister, Mr. Le Drian, happens to be here today with me. And indeed, he mentioned on a couple of occasions coordination between European navies in order to be as present and as visible as possible in Asia. It's not about coordinated patrols, but patrols which come to the South China Sea one after the other. Similarly, we very much wanted to reaffirm the principle of freedom of navigation. It enables us, amongst others, to fight against piracy. It also is a way to be nearby in case of natural disasters. And on such occasions, we deploy vessels, as we've done it, and they are deployed for 4-month missions. Together with Singapore, we also want to have some specific relations in that field, and we here again coordinate our efforts in order to be present and to provide any necessary information as to what we can possibly do in the South China Sea. Regarding cyber defense, this is a priority which we decided, both France and Singapore, to work further on. And we did so, including on the occasion of President Tony Tang's visit to France in 2015, and on that occasion we published a joint statement on cybersecurity. Since 2015, there have been a number of visits of the Singaporean agency as well as French representatives here in Singapore. And we are very much determined to having a joint program in terms of cyber defense, because it is thanks to these technologies that we will be able to better defend ourselves. And like I said, it is often thanks to technology that because of technology that we can also be targeted. So it requires some very close cooperation with trusted partners, as is the case with Singapore. You also mentioned piracy, and please allow me to thank Singapore, which contributed to the efforts of the international efforts in order to fight piracy, including off the coasts of Somalia. And as a matter of fact, we've reached our goal, given that piracy is at a very low level, unprecedented since 2007. We can see what the risks are. Pirates as well as terrorists can try and target vessels to prevent free movement, free navigation. And what the terrorists are trying to do, those who have criminal intentions, they're targeting the most sensitive places. including with those where there are the more exchanges, the Detroits, strategic areas. We therefore are well aware that we need to protect these places, not just because they would impact a region, but because they are key to the world. And with this very high, given the number of goods transported around the world by sea, it is very important. Targeting people, of course, is already an essential threat, but by doing so, by targeting ships, cargoes, they're also targeting the global economy. This is the reason why we shall fight with all the available technology means.
We have time for one more question, and as the chair, I have the problem of selecting from 5 persons who have indicated interest. At a glance, 2 of them are men and 3 are women. And in the interest of diversity, I think my choice has to be obvious. But of the 3 women, one of them happens to be a friend of mine. So it is the prerogative of the chairman to show blatant favoritism. And I would like to invite Ambassador Chan Heng-chi to please give the final question.
Tout d'abord, il y avait ce monsieur qui...
Thank you so much, sir. Now, President Hollande, I was in your...
This is unfortunately the last question, but...
I'll yield it to him if that's...
No, I had indicated that Ambassador Chan Heng-chi was giving the last question.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. No.
Thank you. Unless you want to change your gender very quickly, but...
Maybe we could ask a 2-part question. I'll do the first part, and he
Please.
does the second part. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am Chan Heng-chi, and I am an ambassador at large in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I also wear the hat of the chairman of the Lee Kuan Yew Center for Innovative Cities. And when I have to ask a sensitive question, I'm a chairman of the Lee Kuan Yew Center for Innovative Cities. I think this question is not so sensitive, so I'm an ambassador. Mr. President, you gave a very wide-ranging talk, and you touched on many issues and your many concerns, but I think your preoccupations would be largely in Europe, first and foremost, understandably. Terrorism, France, Brexit, and of course, you're looking at the United States as well. So my question is, where does ASEAN stand in France's strategic calculus? You want your second part? Is it related to mine? Not really, then never mind. I have a second part. I was trying to be inclusive. The second part of my question is, what do you think would be France's contribution to the regional architecture of Asia?
Allez-y, jeune homme.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Il faut bien que je défende la parité. Allez-y.
Go ahead, sir. I have to defend...
Wonderful. Et aussi parce que je m'adresse au Président de la République. J'ai une question.
My question is to you personally, sir. This is almost the end of your term, and I was wondering if, contrary to your predecessor or your predecessors, you will use your quote-unquote retirement to contribute to the cohesion around the world. You mentioned the rise of nationalism, if not protectionism. I come from the east of France, Metz, and my grandfather was somebody who fought on the side of the Germans, even though they were French. And I feel very personally impacted by the rise of, if not nationalism, protectionism, and I was wondering whether after your term of office you would, rather than deal with maybe private interest or just like your predecessor, would you maybe make good use of your expertise? And I'm sure you understood where I'm heading to. Are you going to contribute to the cohesion of the world?
That was a very good final question. Thank you very much.
Je terminerai par...
I will first of all address the French question. First of all, where does ASEAN fit in the French strategy and in the French approach? And I will conclude with the question of the young French person. ASEAN is 50 years old. It is an economic power, but it needs more political, maybe coherence or cooperation in order to do more in terms of an economic development. But for Europe, ASEAN has the strength of a strategic partnership. While Europe is signing trade agreements, there could be also between Europe and ASEAN a partnership agreement which would set some political principles, some common goals, and that would enable all of the countries to know against which background they would work together. This is the reason why, during my term of office, I very much wanted to travel to a number of ASEAN countries and to conclude my term of office by coming to Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia. France always had an Asian strategy. First of all, for historical reasons, we were present in the region. Also, because we have a French community which is present everywhere, and also because our businesses have well understood the ability, the potential for development of the region. But that being said, we did not necessarily give it a political dimension. I think now is the time. It's not just about the economy or culture, but it is also about sharing some common interests. And we have some. And we also share the same attachment to independence and our willingness to set our own destiny. So beyond what France will be doing itself in the years to come, I very much would like to see a partnership between the two regions. As to the other question, well, it's not quite the end, not yet the end of my term of office, and I can still do, including in my own country, a number of things in order to prevent protectionism and nationalism for winning the battle. And it's not just the role of the President of the Republic, it is also the responsibility of each and every citizen, which at some point in time must get themselves heard. And as far as I'm concerned, I will speak aloud as long as I can and make sure that everything I've been doing as a president make sure that there is some follow-up to what I've been doing, including in Africa, of course in Asia, in the Middle East, and in Europe. I do not think that one can assess or judge a presidency just looking at the term of office itself, but we should look at the consequences in the longer term. But in order to do so, I will make sure that I keep talking about what I've been doing for as long as necessary, and I'd rather do it myself than let it be done by others. As to the private activities, I didn't have any for a while. I didn't have private activities before. I will not have any private business activities during my mandate, and neither will have afterwards.
Well, thank you very much, President François Hollande, for your, first of all, of course, for your extremely insightful lecture, and secondly, for your very full and frank answers to the questions. To add on to your last answer, I would say that we in Singapore and in Asia have benefited from the legacy of previous French presidents well after they have left office. And I have no doubt, given what has happened in the last 5 years, that your legacy of enhancing our relationship in a whole range of dimensions, from defense to education to innovation, will live on, and I've no doubt too that you will continue to enhance this relationship. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of Singapore and our audience here today for your contributions. Thank you very much. There's a concluding remarks,
Thank you, DPM and President Hollande. The chairman of the IC's Board of Trustees, Professor Wang Gangwu, will now present President Hollande with a pottery piece crafted by one of Singapore's foremost potters, Mr. Chua Soo Kim. The title of the piece is Blue Network. Thank you, Professor Wang. Thank you, DPM, sir. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the 40th Singapore lecture. Please remain in your seats while President François Hollande, Deputy Prime Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam, and accompanying distinguished guests take their leave.